I wish good things to you who's watching this. I am Alexey, and today we're gonna review a game I have been postponing. Well, let's better say saving for over half a year. Back from a time where I had only recently joined Board Game Arena. As you see from my rating, I had not cracked the 800 mark just yet. Also back from a time when I was still playing for the United Latvian Lithuanian team, and this game is from the World Team Carcassonne Online Championships 2021 held in April, and the United Latvian Lithuanian team is playing against Colombia in round 3 of the group stage. This game happens to be the decider for the whole match. Just to spice it up a little bit, I'm paired up with the second best Colombian player, I think, with the spectacular screen name Alexey with the red meeples. There's a variety of reasons why I wanted to review this game, mainly because I think we managed to come back from a difficult situation without relying on luck too much. Move 3, of course, standard move from the start. As we see, we already have 4 points, and already on his second move, our opponent kind of shows a little bit leak over here. So if you have a curve like this, I mean, there's really 2 moves that you can do. You can just put it over here, start a ring road, or put it, I don't know, over here and start a field. Instead, our opponent just dumps it, which is not a terrible mistake or anything, but I know it just gives you 0 points. You just skip a move. You generally want to avoid doing that at the start of the game. So for example, now this allows us to start a city in a comfortable position over here, and this would not have been possible had the curve stayed over here. So generally, well, you'll see in this game that we're going to be trying to be really aggressive on the points and just simply to outscore our opponent. Well, the play with the red meeples just start the city naturally, and now already on move 3 we have not the easiest decision. It's a great tile to draw, but where do you place it? They're downside everywhere. So you could consider placing the city like this, just starting a new one. But the downside is that now you have 2 open cities and you need 4 city caps to complete them both, and this is just not very likely to happen before your opponent destroys these cities. So you probably have to add it to one of these 2 squares, and if you add it over here, it has a downside that your opponent can now either block this square and gets a 2+1 advantage in this mini battle forever, or simply join and win 10 or 12 points outright. So we do not want that to happen, which is why we place this tile over here. It has a few other downsides, such as, for example, now our opponent starts a block over here and creates an attacking platform over here. But with a reasonably lucky run out, we can either score 12 points for the city if we just get 2 city caps quickly, or something like this perhaps, or in some scenarios, if some of this get blocked, we can still either connect everything over here into a big ruin, or just start a ruin ourselves over here using the square above. Well, now we get a straight road, and of course we need to start harassing our opponent's city a little bit. As you see now, our opponent starts blocking the city. There's still 3 tiles that fit here, so we're fine for now. But we get immediate compensation, at least, because this cost 1 point to our opponent to do, because they added 1 point to our city, equalizing this mini battle over here. Now we start attacking the opponent's city more directly, and as you see, a closed position is brewing. And I like these closed positions a lot, where kind of every point matters, where you need to grind out the advantage, where you need to sometimes spend multiple moves on getting just extra 2 or 3 points. Because the thing is, just to remind you of the format of the match, so each duel is played as a best of 3, and I won the first game and I lost the second game. But what happened in previous games is that we had open positions with big fields and hence a bit more variance. And in both positions, I tried to win without the field, and I was unsuccessful both times, so I had to fight for the field using a 50-50 chance. And in the first game, I got the tile that I needed, and in the second game, I didn't get the tile that I needed. So it kind of sounds fair at this point. But the main thing is that in these open positions, my strategy of just simply pounding on that value and trying to outscore my opponent did not quite work. So in this type of positions, hopefully we can be more successful and outmaneuver with the play with the red meeples. But now he makes a very good move, starting a city and preventing from me getting this ruin over here. And now I have a tile which is not too difficult to play. Of course I wanted to place this over here, right? But now, well, what do you do with it? Actually pause the video and find the only move that gives you at least some value for this tile. So I placed it over here, started a road, and got a 2 versus 1 advantage in this mini battle. So there are really multiple positive scenarios. If this gets blocked, it's great because, you know, we get +1 point in comparison to our opponent's meeple. If this doesn't get blocked, at least we get some compensation for our opponent finishing this little city over here. So these small details matter a lot in these close positions because these games often just comes down to a couple of points. Now our opponent keeps blocking, and this already disallows us from starting a ring road over here, which would have been great for us, right? We just want to do something like this, but we really can't because this meeple is pretty important. We need to protect it, at least if not for city completion, we need to keep the potential for the ruin going. So we place like this, start a new road over here. Now our opponent gets an attack with tempo, so we have to protect indirectly. Instead of scoring 2 points over here, which would have been ideal for us, we need to score 2 points over here and limit the number of blocking tiles that fit here. So now straight roads are no longer suitable for our opponent to block this square. But they get something better. They're now prepared to complete a decent city, and we need to defend. Well, the bad news for us is that our opponent just manages to complete a, what was that, 12, 14, yeah, 12-point city in just 4 moves. And the good news for us is that at least we've managed to cover this up. So there are still 4 tiles that fit here, so 94%, and then 3 tiles that fit over here. And this square, although technically can still be blocked, it's almost unblockable because, well, these 2 squares from which you can create a blocking platform over here, they're nicely constricted. So this city is really nicely covered up, and there's currently an about 70% chance of me completing this. So at this point, it's definitely acceptable. But now I'm just keep my strategy of being very aggressive on the value, and instead of continuing my own ring road, I start a second one. In the early stage of the game, you can typically do that because there's just enough curves to continue. In later stages, in mid to later stages of the game, especially when you have fewer meeples, of course, this move is not the best. But we also want to make sure that we take away a potential from our opponent to take this road and grab a ring road or a 3-point road himself. Well, but as a result, we give our opponent a nice monastery square, which they use immediately. We get to start a new city with tempo. It's a precarious position, but luckily for us, the play with the red meeples attacks it immediately, and so we don't need to worry about this meeple anymore. We could just use the straight road for blocking. But another great tile for our opponent, starting a very dangerous, potentially 8-point city, so we need to constrict it as far as possible. And of course, we're going to use our monastery over here, 4 points, controlling this meeple, and we're going to be using these 2 squares to attack this monastery from the side, whilst build up our own monastery. And now an interesting tile for us. How do we extract value? There's not too many things you can do. Well, one, you can kind of go over here and maybe grab this point, but I think I found the move that's, even though it looks a little bit risky, I think it's just the most profitable move in this situation, is we invest our last meeple, but it's relatively safe position, so we can you know, if we get a curve, we get our meeple back. If we get a city cap, we get our meeple back. And at the moment, we aren't really missing out on value, because if we get a tile that we can't use in either of these spots, then at least we can dump them over here and try to block this meeple. Of course, our opponent will take 2 points and harass our own city. Now we have a bit of a decision here. So do we just try to get a meeple back ASAP, or do we put the tile where it belongs and then just wait for the one of the 4 remaining city caps? And of course I opt for the latter because this city is pretty important, and even if we lose one of these meeples, well, this city, if we complete this, and if we manage to block this guy, then we're gonna get some fighting chance. Well, now our opponent just completes their city just in time, because we were about to drop this tile in this square and make life quite uncomfortable for them, but instead we just get our road back, which is great, and now we have meeples again. So generally it's okay to use your last meeple if you have multiple spots and multiple different tiles that can get you your meeple back. So we had these road ends over here, and we had curves over here, and we had city caps over here. Typically that's enough. But of course our opponent will continue with the blocking, and this move by itself is annoying enough because if we get a curve, then we already put our city in a precarious position. Like, we get a curve and our opponent gets a straight line, so it's a bit uncomfortable for us, but okay, we can deal with it. We're gonna try and block this meeple. This spot is actually critical, because if our opponent gets a city cap, then they complete the city, add 17 points to the scoreboard because they already completed the monastery, and they will even drop the field meeple. And given my meeple disadvantage, it will be very hard to fight for the field. So this is a high priority spot. Yeah, they just continue the blocking platform, and now comes the move that was a difficult decision for me. And well, before I say anything further, this is the pause the video moment. What would you do with this city cap with the crossroads? So we have multiple options. We can just grab 4 points, which is never a mistake. We can grab 3 points over here. We can finish this city, this road, and get another meeple back, or we can block over here. And this is what I did. And I need to explain this a little bit. So why this was a difficult decision is because normally, at least the way I play Carcassonne, you forego immediate value only in extraordinary situations. Like if there's a 4-point road, most of the time you should grab it. But because this spot is so high priority, and because it comes with a field meeple that will really give my opponents a stronghold on the game, we need to limit this as soon as we can, even at the expense of these 4 points. And also, if we think about points, this move adds 1 point to our monastery anyway, so we're investing only 3 points in the blocking. Now it creates a couple of other problems. It leaves this road open, lying around for our opponent, and typically you don't want to leave stuff lying around for your opponent. It's usually a mistake to leave just empty, unoccupied, potentially lucrative features just on the map unclaimed. But it's actually, there's a bit of a paradox here. It's not good to leave one feature lying around. For example, if there's just one city cap. But if there's multiple features, then the chances that my opponent's going to win all races and claim this 4-point road, this 4-point city, and this 5-point road are extremely low. So, you know, if our opponent gets this road, maybe they would get this road, or vice versa. Also, it creates a city cap over here where my opponent will not benefit from taking this city, because it's really in my interest that something goes over here, because completing this city will create a blocking platform on this meeple. And that's why I decided to make this move that goes very much against my playing style. Just make sure that, you know, this city does not get completed. By the way, if we look at our opponent's next tile, then they would have managed to get to continue it and drop a field meeple, and this would have made the game much harder. Now comes another move from my opponent, which made me very happy, they placed it over here, and that's basically helping me rather than blocking me. So ideally, of course, they need to wait for a road, because there would be only 2 tiles left that fits in this square, and you know, that's really not ideal for me. But at least if they want to use this tile, then at least they had to turn it the other way, because the way it's now, there are still 5 tiles that complete my city immediately that fit here, and there's still 1, 2, 3, yeah, there were still like 2 triangles that can continue my city, so that's not really limiting a lot. Of course, there is a downside that if I get a curve first, then I kind of have to put it over here, and then my opponent will be able to drop a straight line and block this meeple. However, this is quite unlikely, because if I get the curve first, I'm not going to put it over here. I'm just going to claim this 5-point road instead, and you know, wait until this meeple gets out, so that I can put this curve over here later. But if you want to use this tile for blocking anyway, a much better way to do it is to turn it the other way around, because there are fewer tiles left that fit here. Of course, there are a couple of triple cities left, but triple cities are not ideal to fill in this hole, because ideally I want to get my meeple back. So I want to get something like a tube shape extender, and there's only 1 of those left. Or I want to get a vertical city splitter, well, horizontal in this case, if you put it like this, and there's only 1 of those left. So instead of constricting myself to 4 tiles, only 2 of which are really good tiles, my opponent gave me 7 tiles basically, so that's just perfect for us. And you see, these kind of small imprecisions, like turning the thing the other way, maybe dropping a curve without meepling, that they accumulate at the end of the game, especially in these close positions, and those actually helped us win in the end. So now our opponent does not find a use to the monastery, and now comes another interesting position. So I've got this fantastic tile, but I need it everywhere. Where do you prioritize? Where do you put this tile? Another pause video moment. So to give you a couple of hints, at least we can identify 4 places where this tile fits. You can finish the city, you can finish this road, you can grab this 5-point road, which gives you 6 points, amazing, and then you can finish this city and create an attacking platform on this city. Well, first of all, let's look at the most lucrative one, 6 points. I did not make this move, but this actually would not have made a mistake. I mean, you really can't make a case against taking this move. But I just figured that there were other priorities, and I needed a meeple earlier, so I ended up retrieving one of these 2 meeples. But let's get back to in a second. So this move has a slight disadvantage, is that it creates a field, a bigger field with an extra city cap over here. And also this city cap that I drop, if I were to grab these 6 points, it will likely belong to my opponent rather than myself, because I already need city caps in several other places. I need it here, I need it here, and I need it here. And so this would just give more useful tiles to my opponent. So instead, I chose to save this meeple and drop a field meeple. So let me explain. The reason why I wanted to drop a field meeple is because we are at a meeple disadvantage. But here's the paradox, right? Why fight for the fields if when you're at a meeple disadvantage? Normally you want to avoid that. But the thing is, claiming a field is not fighting for the field. It's precisely because getting this field back later will be so much harder, because we would need to spend multiple tiles and multiple moves in order to make this happen, rather than just being the first one to drop it. If our opponent wants to win this field outright, they would have to invest 4 tiles and 2 meeples, which is actually not super easy to do, because there are just not too many spots to attack this field. Well, maybe here is a good one. Here is also a good one, but this is actually not an ideal for a variety of reasons. Well, but another thing what this move does is it disentangles these 2 meeples in a way that's more organic. Because had we waited for a regular curve, and put it over here, then this would leave this meeple more vulnerable, and our opponent could have blocked with, I don't know, a triple city with a road or something like this, or just a regular triangle with a road. But now we expand the pool of tiles that are useful to us. So you see, we need city caps over here and over here, but now in this square we need triangles or triple cities. So now whichever tile I draw, I get to extract value from it. So that's what I mean by doing things organically. And yeah, I think these two moves were really the key moments of the game that helped me ultimately win. Yeah, by the way, I know it's a bit of a spoiler, but I mean, just by the title of the video, you can infer that I won in the end. Now comes another interesting move. So my opponent, instead of taking 4 points over here, they just took 2 points next to my monastery, which is great for me. So I kind of understand the move. I understand this move, right? They wanted to make sure that I do not get the road myself, but still, I'm kind of more of a fan of taking, you know, 4 points over 2 just because it's simply more points. And as you see, as a result, this move basically didn't cost us anything because our opponent got just simply 2 points over here, and 2 points is something that you get from a crossroads anyways. So definitely a great scenario for us. Oh, by the way, I'm saying 2 points instead of 3 points because by taking this 3-point road, my opponent is also adding 1 point to my monastery. So when I talk about points, I usually mean net points rather than not overall points. And this is actually how you should be thinking as well. It's not like the absolute number of points that matters, but the number of points relative to your opponent. So of course the value of this move is +2. But let's continue. Now we got a city cap and we create a blocking platform, and so now our opponent, as you will see, gets another crossroads, and then they have a dilemma. Do they place this over here up top and save this meeple with a 50% chance because there's still one tile that fits here, or do they grab 4 points and just kiss this meeple goodbye? Well, they ended up grabbing 4 points, and I can definitely empathize with that. And now, as you see, so this is what I was talking about. Because there are now many more tiles in the square, I get to make this lucrative move that gives me 3 points and creates a big threat of completing a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a 12-point city. So my opponent has to prevent this. Now comes another move that made me very happy. Because as you see, probably if you're red at this point, you want to, well, limits the options for this city. Ideally, you want to place it like place this tile over here, and then get a city cap, and then kind of block this from below. But instead, they grab a 6-point field over here, which looks like a decent move, but it has a range of downside, and it's actually not worth 6 points, but really less in the long run. So first of all, I have been at a meeple disadvantage really half the game, and now I have, you know, a second meeple just gifted to me, which is great. Well, second, the value of this move is not really 6 points, it's 3 points, because this city, even though it's not on my field, it will be on my field once we get a city cap and connect this field and this field. So it's really investing in meeple for just 3 points and kind of making my life easier. This was also one of the key points in the game. And you see, as soon as I got a meeple back, we're just gonna grab another 6-point field. Yeah, even though I'm only with 1 meeple left, I still have multiple places where I can get it back, so it should not be a problem at this stage. And of course, the main move is not so much that I wanted to claim the 6-point field. I want to prevent my opponent from claiming the 6-point field. And it's a bit counterintuitive that we're engaging in this field fight, but because we managed to do this organically with really just single moves rather than sequences, this should give us an advantage regardless of whether we win this field fight or not. Generally, if you're relatively new to Carcassonne and if you're not sure how to play fields, it's probably one of the most complicated parts, and there's so many factors involved, but typically, if you have enough meeples and the field looks good, then you take it. If you have enough meeples and the field looks meh, then you don't take it. If the field looks fantastic, then you take it even if you don't have enough meeples. Well, in this case, it was the first case, that the field looks good, you know, 2 cities, potentially 3. We kind of want to get a stronghold on the main field anyway, so this is a move that you just have to play. And another reason, there isn't really a better place to use the straight line anyway, so another consideration of starting a field is just, well, you know, you have to get a value from a tile somehow, and I don't think there's really any other way in this position. So now our opponent, of course, needs to neutralize this city, but that's okay for us because the main positive event for us is that we managed to finally kind of save this meeple. And at this point, we still have +4 in this mini battle, so our opponent will need to invest in another triangle to connect these cities. And even if this connection is successful, we get 3 points immediately for our field as compensation. Finally, we complete the block. And our opponent, recognizing that we were going to have a 2-to-1 majority, will try to block off the field connection so that he keeps the separate 6-point field, and I have my 9-point field eventually once this stuff unites. However, given my opponent's meeple advantage, which he still has, possibly another strategy that he could have considered is joining over here and then trying to attack the field with a second meeple and possibly even a third meeple if I wait for my city tile for too long. But this is definitely a legit move. So with this move, I made just only because there weren't really any good places to put this tile, and also I'm kind of preparing to complete our shared city with 2 reasons: to minimize the effect of my meeple disadvantage, because having 2 versus 3 is not as bad as having 1 versus 2, and also to add 3 points to my field once the city gets completed. However, there was another move that I could have considered, is dropping this tile over here on the left with the city cap facing down, kind of pre-building a small city on my field, which would give me 7 points if I draw a city cap, and also making it a little bit harder to connect. Well, it's kind of a long thing to explain, but there are some scenarios where my opponent tries to connect on the left at the bottom over here, and this move would have sort of pre-blocked this square a little bit, which, as you see now, Alexey completes this block, so it's now no longer possible to connect this field because all the T-shaped crossroads that would fit in this hole are already out. Well, but there's still an outside way how to do this. So for example, and this is my long-term strategy here, I want to connect these fields and eat up this meeple. So just put this over here and maybe get a straight line or a curve. But of course not with this tile. Finally, this is the city cap that I was waiting for like the entire game. As you see, 3/4 of the game was building the city, and finally it's complete. And finally we have 12 points from here and +9 overall in the game. At the moment, I think the score is +13 in our favor. So we just kind of need to dry out the situation. And interestingly enough, after a lot of meeple disadvantage, a lot of time with meeple disadvantage, we have a meeple advantage 2-to-1. And I decided that this would be my strategy, basically just stay put with these meeples, make sure that I have an extra one. So unite these 2 fields, eat up this meeple, and if my opponent tries to re-attack, then I will have 1 meeple on standby to win this field outright. However, even though it's a legit strategy, that was not always necessary, as you will see. Oh, of course, yeah, with this tile, I'm just going to try to harass this city. And now our opponent, of course, needs to catch up in points as much as he can. And here's a move that I could have considered, is dropping this tile over here and dropping a field meeple. So getting a 3-2-1 advantage in a mini battle, and in case our opponent completes the city, I get this nice 6-point field. But my strategy with just retaining the meeple advantage, I kind of wanted to leave another small field until the last few tiles, just so that I have the spare meeple on standby in case I need to, get a stronghold on the main field or something like this. However, this possibly was not optimal. Well, by the way, great for us that our opponent gets 2 points over here instead of 3 points over here. There were some considerations with that, I know, but typically, if you make a move that gives you less points, fewer points than another potential move, then there better be a very, very good reasons to do that. I guess my opponent was trying to prevent me from expanding my field a little bit further, but well, it's a bit long to explain, but that wasn't really the priority in this position, given that red is behind in points so much. And now comes another, I think, a mistake from me, a strategical mistake. So I get a monastery tile, and then I can just place it over here, put a meeple, and I would be at +11. But I just got married to the idea of retaining my meeple advantage and winning with the field fight, so I made this move. And it fits my strategy, but this is a bit of an unnecessary risk, because my opponent now with this tile, for example, can place over here and try to win the city from me. Even though there's only one tile that fits here and just immediately completes this city and gives my opponent a lot of points, I figured that the chances for that were pretty low, because there were several scenarios here. My opponent can, he actually, with this tile that he got, he should attack, but statistically, if he ever were to get this connection tile, he would have to wait a few moves and spend a few moves without meeples. And during that time, I could merge these fields, eat up this red meeple, and just catch up on points, so that even if my opponent wins this big city outright, I still win. However, in some scenarios where my opponent places this tile over here, he gets the requisite tile on his next move immediately, and this is something that I should avoid. So at this point with this move, I'm giving like a, I think overall a bit over 10% chance for my opponent to win based on my post-game calculations, but this is really not necessary. So I could have gone for a 100% rather than 90% win. My opponent luckily does not use this move, instead starts pre-building a field. And again, this is something I should have just recognized and placed this tile over here, drop the field meeple, seal the game. That's great, because I'm gonna have a 6-1 meeple advantage, and if my opponent completes a city, I get to have a 9-point field over here. But I was just too married to the idea of winning the game I was planning to win. I just did not recognize this opportunity, and so before dropping a field meeple, I decided to grab greedily 4 points first, and then drop a field meeple on my next tile using this one, but my opponent beat me to it and now managed to get a 9-point field. And now things are not looking that great. So we still have the meeple advantage, which is great, and but we are at -2 overall because it's 9-point field. Well, it's not hard at all to get 2 points with a meeple, but now there's the risk of our opponent still attacking, and we don't want that to happen, so we kind of have to go over here. And it's not so much that I'm trying to win back the city, I'm just trying to prevent my opponent from sharing these points. And even though we're at -1, I still can connect these fields, and with that move get +9, or I can win this city. By the way, there are 2 tiles left, so I said that there was only one, but there was one left to join and complete, there's also the big quadruple city still open, so I can put it over here and just get a lot of points for this ruin over here. So a lot of things work out for me still. And in the worst case scenario, if we get none of these tiles, then at least we have a platform to just add a couple of points over here with a mini ruin, and then this would equalize us enough with our opponent, just enough to win this game by 1 or 2 points. Well, the last few moves the red does, I'm not going to be too critical because they were low on time, they were in a difficult situation, and we're just not going to comment on them. But finally, I get the tile that merges our fields, gets me +9 with this situation, and at this point the game is sealed because there's really nothing that our opponent can do. They can try to re-attack this field on the left, but if they share this field, I get a spare meeple, and all I need to do is score a couple of points with this meeple. For example, grab a 4-point road like this, or a ruin, or just anything, and then I get to win by 1 or 2 points depending on the run out. And this is what happens in the game. We even get an extra 4 points. And we get a ruin over here. Yeah, we get 5 points over here. And as a result of winning this 12-point field outright, we managed to win the game, despite being down a lot of points and a lot of meeples. But, so let's just have a quick analysis of the analysis. I don't know. So what happened over here is I made 3, I think, suboptimal moves. So let's go back to the position with 13 tiles remaining after I've gotten the advantage and just look at my mistakes first again, because it's interesting that they happened in succession. It's kind of 3 suboptimal moves in a row, and the reason for that is mostly psychological rather than factual, because I was so already preparing for this idea that I'm going to merge this field. I didn't realize that I had a 100% win rather than a 90% win. So again, missed an opportunity to drop a field meeple. Well, this is okay. Now, missed an opportunity to score 5 points and leave myself at +11. And now the third one got a little bit too greedy over here. Instead of going on the field and really almost sealing the game, I just grabbed 4 points and let my opponent take the field and give ourselves and my team a bit of an unnecessary sweat. So much for my mistakes. I think the main thing that our opponent did was just sometimes not gaining enough points, dropping off the starting curve and a couple of other things where just simply could have gotten a little bit more points than I did. There was a moment that mattered a lot, is prioritization. Despite our meeple disadvantage, we somehow managed to get a stronghold on the main field, and that's really secured the game for us. So we had to make a move, a sequence of moves that was against my usual playing style, so using this lucrative tile for blocking just of the strategic significance of this square. And that would be a second lesson for this game. So look for positions where you can deviate from what you normally do in games if something is of big strategic significance. Anyway, I hope you learned something from this. Yeah, and I'm gonna see you very soon with a few other games. But before we wrap up, I wanted to ask you this. I've been mostly sharing my wins rather than my losses. Would you like to see more videos with my losses? And if so, I'm gonna make sure that the next game is just that. If not, more of usual content coming up soon in a few days. Please like, subscribe, it all greatly helps with the algorithm. Also, tell your friends about this channel. I know some of you have been doing this and that's super helpful. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.